Welcome to our P.D training video for photon compensator creation using the Eclipse treatment planning system. So we begin by opening P.D and logging into the software, and then we can go ahead and return to our Eclipse treatment planning box. If you have P.D installed on the same computer, then simply just open Eclipse now. Otherwise, we'll need to return to that Eclipse machine. Okay, I have it installed on a different machine, but I'm remotely connected. So I'm going to go ahead and choose File, Export from my Eclipse system, and I'm going to choose Wizard. And I've already got my plan created here. I've got the fluence calculated. Everything I need is already taken care of in this plan. So I'm at the point where I'm ready to export. We only need to send the plan. So I select Plan, click Next. Okay. We don't need to include the structure set or the images when we're computing compensators in P.D. So the file transfers will be much quicker if we don't have these checked, because all we really need is the plan file, and we need to make sure that that plan file includes fluences. So make sure this include fluences box is checked. Okay. If we include the structure sets and slices, it's optional if you would like to include those in P.D, but keep in mind that will increase the transfer time because we need to send all those image files over to our P.D machine. So go ahead and click Next, and we're going to choose our Export to P.D filter. If you have not set up the filter in Eclipse yet for exporting to P.D, please refer to our other help guides to help you set that up. Once you have that set up, make sure that's selected, click Next, and Eclipse is going to prepare our file for export. Once that is completed, we're going to notice that if we just sit and watch P.D, we're going to see my two patients here. We're going to see a third one come in, and P.D is going to notify us in the lower left corner that it's detected that a plan is being transferred from the Eclipse workstation. So P.D also has a DICOM listener that's been set up in the background. So if you have yet to set up the listener for the P.D side of it, you need to make sure that you follow the training guide for that as well. Okay, we can go ahead and click Finish real quick and go back to P.D. And there we see P.D is now importing our plan, and just that quickly the import was successful, and we see that our patient shows up in our recent patients list. Okay, that listener that P.D is running can be set up through the settings menu. As I said, if you haven't done that yet, you'll need to set up these DICOM import and export settings for your Eclipse machine. So please follow the help guides pertaining to that to set that up. Once we have our patient in here, we can go ahead and click to open it. We can choose the appropriate machine if we don't have the correct one defined. We're going to use the dot decimal example machine here. And now we see that we've got all of the beams came into our software. We can see the shape of all those beams here. Because Eclipse transfers DICOM files, we get all the beam information. So we have the collimator sizes, the isocenter positions, gantry angles, all of that information for the beams. If we go to the compensator wizard now, we can actually go ahead and create our parts. And again, since Eclipse is using the DICOM files to transfer to P.D, the energy should already have come in for us. So in this case, this is a 6 MV beams that were transferred. So P.D has selected the energy that it detected from the DICOM file. The machine that we selected on import should already be there. If we're making IMRT parts, we want to select brass. If we're making missing tissue compensators, we will typically use aluminum. We need to determine which beams do we want to create compensators for. In this case, all of them. And then we need to determine what's the maximum thickness we want for these compensator parts. Are these 3-inch parts or are these 2-inch parts? So 76 millimeter for 2-inch or 50 millimeter for 3-inch. So depending on what your machine accommodates and what type of part you have, that will dictate which thickness setting you need to select. In this case, all of the defaults are correct for standard brass compensators. So we're going to go ahead and click Create Compensators. And in just a few seconds, P.D will convert those fluences from Eclipse into the appropriate compensator shapes that we need. And we'll see that it renders all of them at the source to tray distance, so we kind of get a realistic view of all the different angles that this patient's being treated from and what each of these compensators looks like. Okay. We also remember we have the beam's eye view if we want to see individual compensators, and we want to see sort of these isoplots of thicknesses of the compensator at different locations. We can do that. Or if we click Finish to end the wizard, we can go ahead and look at single compensators just by toggling on just individual compensators from the 3D view if we want to take a little closer look at maybe one at a time. Okay. Once we've got our compensators created and we know that the conversion looks like it happened correctly, we can go ahead and export these parts back to our treatment planning system via DICOM files. So Eclipse is going to accept these back using DICOM files. We're going to click Next, and we're going to see that we've already set up an Eclipse server to export our parts back to the treatment planning system. So once again, we needed a filter for sending out of Eclipse, we needed a filter for importing into P.D, and we need a filter for exporting out of P.D. That's a one-time setup for all those. Shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 minutes to get all of those filters set up for you. And then every time you come in, it's as simple as opening this wizard, selecting the Eclipse server, and clicking Export. And now these have gone directly back to our Eclipse system, and we are ready to view and open our parts in Eclipse. Okay, so we still have that export wizard open here, so I'm going to go ahead and close that in Eclipse. And now our parts have been sent back to Eclipse for us, our new plan. So we can go ahead. Oops. So we can go to File and Import. And we're going to use the import wizard in Eclipse now to bring our P.D plan back into Eclipse. So I've got my import from P.D filter set up. I click Next. And notice it didn't find any files. The default directory that this is looking for is not the right one. So I need to navigate to my actual directory where P.D put my new files and click Open. And there's my plan I exported from P.D. So depending on how you set up your filter, it may or may not be the default directory in this case. So navigate to that directory, choose the plan that you would like to import, and choose Next. Make sure you have the correct plan there, and we're going to go ahead and import that plan. And there we go. We see Eclipse added a second plan for us here. And we are ready to go ahead and compute our dose using Eclipse. And you'll notice that when you're computing the dose using Eclipse, we need to specify the weight for each of these beams. Okay? So to get these weight for each of these beams, we do that within the P.D software. So typically you should do this before you leave P.D. But if you're on the same machine, it really doesn't make a difference. So to get the Eclipse weights that we need for each of these beams, we go ahead to the Generate Reports option. We make sure all of our compensators are checked. If we have any other parts in here, we probably don't need them checked. If you have any photon blocks or anything, you probably don't need them. And then we want to go ahead and open all the reports when finished. So we click Finish, and P.D is going to generate PDF reports for all of our parts for us. So these are something you can use for record keeping if necessary. And these also give us the Eclipse weights that we need. Alright, so we notice quite a few PDFs opened here. This is one for each of our parts. We can scroll down to the bottom of the PDF, and we'll see that we have a weight here for the beam. Okay, so we've got the beam name, G080, and we've got the weight. So we can copy that. If you're on the same machine as your Pinnacle your Eclipse machine, you can type that right in to beam G80, and you can change the weights for those beams as needed. Okay, so you'll enter each of the beam weights. Okay, so we can go to each of our files, get the beam name, get the beam weight, and enter them into Eclipse. Unfortunately, Eclipse does not give any way to automatically populate those for an outside software. So you'll have to manually enter those beam weights, and then you can recompute your dose as normal using the Eclipse software.